Right, welcome to Countdown 2019 on Nigeria Info 99.3, where we discuss all the big and significant issues on the road to the 2019 elections. You can follow the program on Twitter at Countdown 2019 NG and at Rotimi Sankore, and also at Nigeria Info FM. You can also follow at Awogo Obo. Today on Ideas segment with IOB, we're looking at campaigns open and run in just a couple of days into the campaigns, and by extension into, of course, the bigger show itself, where we'll also look at many of the issues associated with the campaign. So, welcome to Countdown 2019. Hello, Rotimi and Ayo.
Hi. Hello.
All right. So, where do we take it off from? Was this what you expected, Ayo, in terms of I've had a lot of criticism on INEC. People expected Professor Mahmoud Yakub to have some sort of speech, welcoming Nigerians, heralding the season of campaign, but they just got a statement saying the voter education has actually begun on the wrong note. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think that the biggest issue is that, first of all, if you are flagging off a race, you need to let everybody know what the rules of the race are. And it's not just a matter, we have to remember that it's not only the political parties who need to know the rules by which they are to play, but also that we, the members of the public, need to know so that we can also assist INEC. I think that the problem of INEC is thinking that it has to be the alpha and omega of everything to do with regulation of elections. Whereas the fact is that INEC cannot be everywhere. We have how many political parties with how many campaigns at 5 different levels, and if the eye of the world is on the presidential and maybe the gubernatorial in some states, not even in all states, and then perhaps on some of the leading Senate races, certainly when it comes down to the House of Representatives, State House of Assembly, the campaign could be just as vicious and visceral or as lofty and elevated, but we will not see. And so, but the people who are actually voting in those elections would want to would want the rules to be obeyed, and would also want to see who is doing what is right and who is not. But if we're not also brought into the picture by INEC, we can't help INEC with that exercise. So I think that's a really important part of it. Simply just letting us know, campaign has started, without telling us what campaign consists of, because already, as I've said, many people would have noticed there have been some billboards and posters here and there, and and they were being left there under guise of this was for the primaries, and yet we've all seen some of these billboards. Was that part of campaign or not? I think, Rotimi, you've raised some issues about commissioning of projects. Is it just coincidence that many things are being commissioned and flagged off? In some countries, as you said, it's forbidden.
Well, we're in a dilemma here now, because we were expecting the INEC Director of Voter Education and Publicity to join us to help clarify all these very important questions. But it looks as if the man is stuck in one of those emergency INEC meetings.
But Rotimi, should INEC be having emergency meetings? I mean, seriously.
No, they shouldn't.
Should it be? I mean, this is a schedule that had been laid out for so many months.
Yes.
And even years in advance. And so one would expect that INEC has its things scheduled. But if the INEC Director of Voter Education and Publicity can't join us, I wonder whether we can pick your own brain because on the ideas section, what concerns us is the integrity of the electoral process. And when we're talking about the campaign, which is part of the electoral process, integrity isn't just about whether you're spending money or not, although we want to know from INEC how it's monitoring the spending of money. But I think the first thing that occurs to most of us is the kind of voter, the kind of publicity and campaign advertisements that we're seeing. I'm not going to talk at the moment about social media, where, quite frankly, I don't envy anybody who has to monitor the kind of things that are said. But even on television, radio, and newspaper advertisements, how do we guarantee the integrity of these advertisements?
Well, first, let me say again, I was rather hoping that the INEC Director of Voter Education and Publicity would have been able to help, really, because a lot of these questions are really quite specific. And I thought, first of all, the first thing they would have done at this time would have been throughout last week up to the 18th to put out a series of ads, jingles, use social media to break down the do's and the don'ts so that both the political parties and the candidates know what the rules are and can tell when a party is bending or breaking. As it is now, a lot of it is up in smoke. So unless, like us, you've read through the Electoral Act as amended, looked at the old one. Well, I have to.
Yes.
So unless you've read both of them, you don't really know when a campaign is a campaign and when a campaign is not a campaign. And when a campaign violation is a violation and when it is not. And there are even some things that are not really ethical, even though not illegal. So on the Monday after the campaigns kicked off, and even up till today, but on the Monday it was very glaring when the incumbent party at the federal level bought the front pages of 4 major newspapers and put the artwork of the president and the vice president, their party logo, thumbprint, broom, on the front pages. And there was no line at the bottom saying this is an advert. In more developed democracies where there are stricter regulations, what those newspapers may do is to take the advert, create a special cover, but also say turn over for your regular headlines.
Or even just simply
say this is a paid advert. Yes. So by achieving that, and what is really, I don't even know whether to say painful or disappointing, is that one of the president's spokespersons, in fact both of them, but one of them especially, Femi Adesina, was the former head of the Guild of Editors. So he knows that, that this should not be happening. And his former paper, which he'll probably go back to after the 4 or 8 years, yes, he will probably, yes, the Sun, was one of the 4. And it was just really disappointing. And it's like some people don't understand why it is unethical.
Yes. Do you think that most people would understand it as an advertisement, or do you think that they would understand it as a news item being carried by that
the thing is,
paper?
if you had the luxury of looking at 10 newspapers like we do, and you saw 4, then you would know. If you see exactly the same thing, you would know. But if you picked up only one of them, say like the Punch, for instance, which was one of the 4, if you picked it up in isolation, you would think that was your headline for the day.
Yes. So,
and sorry, just to make another point. So if you were a supporter of another party, you would be wondering, what is the Punch doing? Is this an endorsement for the incumbent party without a justification of why they are endorsing a candidate? Because newspapers can endorse, but they have to explain in their editorial that,
it's an editorial matter.
Yes, and it's an editorial matter, and they will say it's not a front page matter, although they can put an editorial on the front page on one side of it and say this is an editorial. We endorse or support.
Well, I think the point really is that whether it's an editorial or where they place it, the difference between what the newspaper is writing itself and what a political party has paid for ought to be very clear.
Very, very clear.
And I wonder, was there any reaction from INEC when this happened?
No, not to the best of my knowledge, because it's carried over till today. 4 very glaring on Monday, then again on Tuesday and on Wednesday. And the point again is that if people get the impression that you can buy headlines, then when it's a genuine headline, then people will say, well, look, the parties buy headlines all the time. Why are people complaining? So if in 3 or 4 weeks' time, any or a series of papers run headlines that the presidency does not find to its liking, they will assume the other side paid for it.
Yes. Yes.
And then something you have to spare some thought. Maybe on radio it's possible we could avoid talking about the advertisements on the paper, but on TV,
Yes.
well, some have found
They're
an
doing
ingenious
it
way, to cover it up and not
Yes.
show it. But others I've watched have shown those ads.
In fact,
Unfortunately,
this is one of the reasons why, as you said, to have the INEC Director of Voter Education and would be important because, as I said, we, the ordinary members of the public, may also share your concerns. But how do we get our concern across to INEC? Is there a mechanism by which we can complain to INEC? And if we do complain to INEC or raise our concerns, it may not be a complaint, it may just be an observation. What does INEC do with those issues that we raise?
Yeah.
Do they just put them aside?
Yeah.
And
do
of
they
course,
flag it? Do they caution the parties?
Yes.
Do they say this is illegal, that this is wrong, it shouldn't be done again? It's not clear at all. There is no hotline.
In fact,
there is no
that's
email.
yeah.
There is no whistle-blowing facility to say that political parties cannot do X,
No,
Y,
I think
Z.
you would say that it's vitally important that INEC should, as a matter of urgency,
Yes.
make it clear to the
Yes.
public where they can raise issues
Yes.
with the Independent
Yes.
National
And,
Electoral
and,
Commission.
and if I may just add, the key thing with the papers is that a lot of people don't realize that, like the executive, the judiciary, and parliament, the media plays a key role in democracy. In fact, it's written into the constitution. So while some of the media may be owned by private, or by government, or it is written into the constitution that the media has a role to play. So if the media or some sections of the media seem as if they are, not quite being objective, factual, truthful, then it starts to undermine the fabric of the media.
Yes.
And that's when political parties and governments can come out and say, oh, they've been bought, oh, they represent, because they have participated in the buying.
Yeah. Another point, finally, on this issue of advertisements. I mean, obviously, it's the paying for advertisements is only a small part, or maybe a large part, of campaign expenses. Nonetheless, many voters are concerned about the way that money is being spent in the election, and of course there are limits on the amount that can be spent. And another issue that I would have put to the INEC director, but in his absence I put to you, is how well equipped is INEC really to monitor? You remember that last week we had Mr. Eze Onyekbere of the Center for Social Justice saying that there were attempts, or there was a hope by some NGOs to work with INEC on this issue. But I wonder whether INEC is it engaging ad hoc staff, and if so, what are the criteria to help it with this very important part of its responsibilities?
To the best of my knowledge, INEC is not. I would have thought INEC should have a big monitoring center, or if INEC is not doing the monitoring itself, that INEC is working with a group of organizations to say, please let us know the result of your monitoring of XYZ, because really it's not possible for INEC to do everything. But INEC has built strong partnerships with different organizations. Say, for instance, the Civil Society Situation Room, which is led by Clement Nwankwo, and there are others, the Transition Monitoring Group, etc. So if, for instance, INEC has not, and I don't know that they have, a monitoring room, there are several monitoring projects going on. I know that the International Press Center, the IPC, for instance, is running something. They could agree and say, can you make the results of your monitoring available to us.
And do we know how widely spread geographically some of these monitorings are? Because there tends to be a focus on the national campaign and maybe on Lagos and some major cities like Port Harcourt or Kaduna. But it's often in the backwaters and the sideways that the real abuses flourish and nobody talks about them.
Yes, because there is no media to cover it, and that's when the media itself is not involved in the because when the media hasn't been compromised. I mean, we can remember from the last elections the infamous documentary called The Lion of Bodilon. I mean, which it just had so many inaccuracies in it that media house actually had to pay for the inaccuracies, just to put it lightly, you know. And it's those kind of things that the media should actually be reporting or investigating or saying to citizens, especially those in rural areas that are not well covered to the media, bring this to our attention.
Yeah.
But if sections of the media themselves are so compromised, then in those places where the media is not really present, politicians just feel that they can do whatever they like in those places, and the citizens wouldn't know any better, which is why I would have thought that for the 1 week or for the 1 month running up to the 18th, when the campaigns kicked off, that INEC would have been putting out posters, jingles, newspaper ads, social media to say parties can't do this, candidates can't do that, this is illegal, if you see this, please report.
Well, Rotimi, I think that with that, we have to bring the ideas section of the program to an end. I want to remind viewers that apart from me, who you can get at Nijama on Twitter, you can also get the program itself, which is Ideas Radio NG. We also have a website that you should please check out, ideasradio.ng. And with that, I hand over back to you two gentlemen.
Thank you.